Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Mo Show Live. I am so excited about today's show and today's guest and to share him and his message with everyone. Our guest today is author and attorney Johnnie Finch. Johnnie is the author of the new book, Black Lawyer Confidential Keys to Success. And I really enjoyed reading the book. I got to know Johnnie in the book, realized that we had some connections that I didn't know from before I read the book with Johnnie about growing up in small town in the South and going to small high schools and really made us even more of a connection with Johnnie. But there's some really great takeaways that I took away from the book that we're going to drill down on that I think, certainly apply from a legal perspective as Johnnie is as an attorney and has his own law firm. But I really think that they apply across any business owner, and a lot of the concepts actually apply in our personal daily life. So I'm excited to talk to Johnnie about those and to share that with everyone out there. So let's get started. Let me formally introduce Johnnie. Again, our guest today is Johnnie Finch. Johnnie is a graduate of Elizabeth City State University, where he majored in criminal justice and sociology. He holds a law degree from Regent University School of Law. And again, he has his own law firm in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. It's the law office of Johnnie Finch. Johnnie primarily practices in the area of criminal law. I think he dabbles in some other areas when it comes in civil rights and maybe some personal injury. He's what we like to call a trial lawyer, which is someone who's in the trenches fighting for his clients. He enjoys working with youth and speaking to youth groups and speaking to others in his area. He is an aspiring author, has this book, and I think for what I'm talking to you in show prep, Johnnie, you may have some other ideas for some other books to come out. And he's married, folks, and he's got 2 young children. So Johnnie's got a full plate like a lot of us do. So Johnnie, my friend, thank you so much for taking time today. How are you doing, buddy?
Big Mo, I am so happy to be here. You booked me in, what was it, three or 4 months ago. So every night I've lost sleep, and I finally made it. So I'm excited to be here, man. I'm putting it all on the line today, man. I've saved it for you.
Well, save it up, man, and let's pour it out and let's sprinkle it out on everybody and spread some knowledge to everybody. And Johnnie, Johnnie, you may have the best Twitter handle out there. I think it's cool and relaxed, something like that. So hey, man, I'm trying to get some of that by osmosis, everybody. So folks, before we kind of dive into talking about a little bit about Johnnie and about his book and some of the key takeaways, if you're watching today's show live, please say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. If you've got questions, if you're an aspiring law student or aspiring business owner that has some questions, or if you've got any questions about being an author, writing your first book, I'm sure Johnnie would be glad to chime in and give you his take and his 2 cents on that. So, Johnnie, one of the things that I took away from the book that I don't think I knew before I read it, and maybe I should have, which was that you went to law school a little late. I think you had worked for about 7 years as a juvenile justice officer for the state of North Carolina. Talk to us a little bit about that and how that shaped and molded you, and then how that kind of led to you going to law school.
Well, after undergrad, I was super tired of school at that point. I chose criminal justice because it was a major that I felt like I could relate to, and I felt like in the small town I could find a job. Shortly after that, God blessed me, and I was able to find a job with the North Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice, and working with young kids every day from troubled homes. Some of them not the best home environments. Some of them came from very good families between the ages of 12 and 17. Some had committed murder. And it was a really, really good start for me. My first opportunity to really get into the work world, which I felt like prepared me, obviously, for being in law practice, because had I not had that experience, I wouldn't know what true work politics are, office politics are, city politics. All of those are a big part of everything that we do, especially as a lawyer. So I was happy to get that early, but more than anything else, that taste of this experiment, being able to see what those juveniles' lives were like. And then now that I'm dealing with the same clients, some of the same students that I've dealt with back in the Department of Juvenile Justice is really giving me an advantage, I think, over a lot of the lawyers that are out here. Not that I need the advantage, but if I can sit and see eye to eye with my client, that only helps them.
I agree. And hey, man, let me tell you something. As a lawyer, there's no reason we won't take an advantage any way we can get it, as long as it's ethical. and let's run with it, because we need a lot of times, if you're doing personal injury work and you're the plaintiff, you got the burden of the proof, or you're the criminal defendant lawyer, you're fighting an uphill battle a lot of times, and so we need to take advantage of it. And I think, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but relating to your client and seeing things through their eyes, I think only makes you a better advocate for them.
Of course, of course.
Yeah. So, folks, if you haven't heard about Johnny's book, what I want to do is kind of talk about some key takeaways that I took away from the book. But the thing, just a quick overview of the book, Johnny kind of walks through, his days in law school and selecting a law school, and his advice on selecting a law school, some advice and his experiences in academics in law school, and his struggles and his triumph through law school. Talks about taking the bar and the struggles taking the bar and how big of a challenge that can be for anybody attending law school. And then at the end of the book, he kind of starts talking about how preparing yourself for legal practice and how you need to look at certain things. And Johnny, what I really wanted to do was, when I read through the book in the last week, was I really took away some key takeaways that I thought, as I mentioned when I opened the show, really, really drill down, not only about being a lawyer, and I want to talk about how those relate to being a successful lawyer, but I think they relate to being a successful person and a successful business owner, regardless of what your venture may be, where you're practicing. The first thing you talk about in one part of the book, you talk about learn people and you'll be a better lawyer. And I think that's true in any profession. I really think that if you've got to know your audience, and that's whether you're talking to a judge or a jury, and certainly your client too, and how you may handle that may vary from one type of a case and one type of judge or jury to another. Talk to us a little bit about what you mean by that.
Well, generally, there's 4 or 5 different moving parts. This is where, whether you're at your home with your family, whether you're in the office with your client, whether you're in the courtroom with a judge, opposing counsel, or a jury, or whether you're in Food Line, all moving parts are fighting each other most of the time. Your job as an advocate and as a good attorney, and then what a good attorney is, he steps into that space and he creates harmony. So anytime you can go into a space and create harmony, you as an advocate for your client, it can only help. There are some situations that are going to be fights, but if you can take a rough situation, and I've learned this from Mitch back in his when he used to do Mitch Jackson, when he did the communications podcast. Anytime you can step into a space and create harmony, it can only help things for your client and help things for yourself. That's with your family, that's with the courtroom, any of those places. Fortunate for me, I have the great experience of having clients that I can relate to that are just like me, came from the same town as I was from, same high schools, the same economic status, and generally are going through a bad spot. They're looking to me for help, and so they're wide open. They're an open book, and they're looking for help in any way they can get it. So when you have people who are in these places, they're looking at prison time, or they're looking at jail time, they're looking at a felony, or a teacher who has a DWI, and he or she's looking at being fired. They're looking to you, and they're very, very receptive to what you have to offer. Your job is to keep that same openness and apply it to the state's attorney or opposing counsel or the judge or whoever you're selling that to. And all you have to do is, well, not all you have to do, but the way that you manage that is by leveraging your client's interest versus the state's interest or the judge's interest. A lot of times in court, things are really, really aggressive. Let's say that your client is charged with knocking someone upside the head or something that's really, really egregious. You have to pull the human side out of your client. And if you can pull the human side of your client, because going into the situation, the judge may be looking aggressively or the state's attorney may be looking aggressively. Once they can see the human side, the side that you only know from your client from talking to them, they can begin to agree to some things that can help your client out. But so understanding over and over again, it's not as bad as what everybody thinks, because this is a human right here, but you guys have to open your eyes to be able to see it. And if you can take the air out of the room long enough where people realize that this is a person that has made a mistake just like anybody else, whether that's at home, when your wife is mad at you, or your kids are upset with you, whether you're a dentist, whether you work at Walmart, whether you're a garbage man, all of these play. So creating that harmony is big, and it's a skill that all of us have to learn. Otherwise, we're constantly fighting each other.
Man, that is good. Bernard Nomberg, our friend down in Birmingham, said you're dropping truth bombs, and I agree. Thanks for Bernard. Thanks for Mitch Jackson for joining us. Seth Price, Barney Lowry, my friend, a local attorney for R. Joseph, and Tori Newsom. Thank you guys all for joining us. I think that's right. I think what I think a successful lawyer and a successful business person has to try to figure out is, we're maybe in an adversarial system, and I think, as the movie says, go to the mattresses on it for your client. You're going to fight and need to do, but there are things that you can find to agree upon. You need to pick your battles on where to do it. There's some things that you may not need to be argumentative adversarial on if there's no need to, because it just looks petty. And I think some lawyers and some people argue and bicker over certain things that it's really not a big issue. Let's identify the key things that are critical, and let's dig in on those if we got to dig in on them and do it. I think sometimes lawyers lose that and lose sight of that. But I think, what we talk, you and I and some of our friends around the country that talk about when we're talking about being active on social media and doing, talk about sharing our human side. And I think that was a great point that I think is probably lost on some lawyers is that if you're representing a criminal offender, or if in my case, if I'm representing an injured person, I need to share who they are, right? If I'm trying to talk and I'm representing Johnnie Finch, who was injured in the accident, and I'm claiming he had these problems, I need to let the jury know who was Johnnie before this. This is Johnny's life before this. Now this is his life after. This is how it's changed. These are things that Johnnie liked to do with his kids or his family that he was doing before he can't do now. And so I have to humanize you so the jury can get to know you and like you, and then they resonate with you in the struggles that you're going through because of whatever we're bringing this thing for. So that's really good. And I think as you said, I think when I was saying a while ago, it applies really because it's so funny. You've got to know your audience, and as a lawyer, I think if you're in the courtroom more and more, different jurisdictions and different judges, you may handle the exact same case two different ways or approach the argument two different ways, right, Johnny? I mean, you got to know your audience.
I know a lot of times for me, and getting back to the issues that you fight on, I purposely, if I know there's one thing that I need, I'll purposely fight less hard on the issues that I don't need. So I may make an objection. I may say, Judge, for the record, I just want to make this objection. The next one, Judge, for the record, I just want to make this objection just for the record, no problem. But then when it's go time, I'm standing up. I've asserted myself. I've made my body language bigger, and I'm saying, now, Judge, this is something that we need to speak to out of the presence of the jury. It's important, and it needs to be on the record or off the record, but we need to talk about this one right here. Now I'm using my hands, and now I'm a little bit bigger. Well, Johnny, he let the other three slide. Obviously, this is something major. He hadn't asked for much. He has not asked for much, but maybe I could throw him this bone, because a lot of times you're not in a position where they want to throw you any bones. But if you're constantly fighting on each little issue, the judge is going to, because he may or may not know why it's important to you. But if you've created a space where his court isn't frantic, he doesn't have to keep asking the jury to go in and out or keep telling counsel not to go back at each other. Hey, this is just that one thing that I'm asking for, Judge, and this is important. I'm not letting it go. He just might grant it. And a lot of times that's the difference between a win and or guilty and not guilty, or responsible or not responsible.
Yeah, I agree. Mitch Jackson just said it's so important, pick and choose your arguments, bam. And I agree. I mean, I've even had cases where I've been in front of a judge and it's on the point that, I may want to argue about or may have a different advantage point, but it's really not the linchpin to my case or in a summary judgment motion or something. I say, Judge, look, I can agree to let that go, but here's this. This is without question, and here's why. And I've got, something to support it and do. And like you said, I like how you kind of say you bow up and you kind of swell up and get a little bit bigger. I don't need any help getting any bigger. I'm trying to get smaller right now, Johnny. But that's so true. Is that really do, and then the judge is going to be more likely to take you serious as opposed to the old story, the little boy who cried wolf. If you're up just jumping up and down, like a kangaroo every time the other opposing counsel is saying something, he or she's just not going to take you serious. One of the other things that struck me that I think is a life truth, and I certainly think it's a truth as a lawyer, and that's managing expectations. And you talk a little bit about managing expectations with clients. Talk to us a little bit about, why that's so important. I know that I see that a lot in my practice, and that I try to set that at the beginning of the case and let them know, where I expect it to go and do. Certainly, I don't know to the end of the day till I have all the evidence to do, but sometimes if they come in with an inflated expectation on how the case may resolve, I need to go ahead and kind of put them straight first, because that's how I want to be treated.
I generally try to start at an emotionally low point when I speak with a client. I like for them to feel comfortable with me. I like for them to be comfortable with me to be comfortable with them as they're discussing their case. I'm shaking my head and I'm taking notes. I'm taking into account some things that we can do. If I get to a point where there is a slam dunk or there's a situation where I know that they fall into a certain category based off what they told me, and they're going to be able to pretty much get off pretty much scot-free, I'm okay with letting them know that. But other than that, I try to just manage my own emotions and just deal with, this is what you need to do in your personal life. I need you to continue to go to drug treatment. I need you to maintain your job. I need you to do this community service. Let's meet again in a couple of weeks. Show me where you are, and I can show you what work I've done since then. And because I'm a really passionate person in general, so usually my first time I meet with a client, we're just talking about how I feel about the situation, what I feel that they can do better, how I've been there, how I recognize the situation over and over and over again, how you're not a bad person, how you don't suck, it's okay, you're great, you have a master's degree. Listen, this is what we're going to deal with, and just building that rapport. But there comes a time when the rubber meets the road. There comes a time when you may look at your case facts and you realize that your client is going to do some significant time based off of the discovery, based off it not being a tribal case, based off the fact that there are some serious injuries to another party. And at that point, what I always try to do is, okay, this is where we at. I'm going to advise you on both ends. I'm going to give you it on both ends, but I'm also going to let you know, if you let this opportunity go today and you don't take this amount of time or you don't take this felony, it's not going to get any better. And the chances of it getting better if we go to trial and it doesn't work is going to be a lot worse for you. So understand that. And at each level, I always say at each level, I'm always going to give you both sides. I'm not going to hold the ball from you unless it's really, really good. And I might wait to the end. But that's when I'm not sure. Sir, you're free to go. It's always, everybody wants to hear they're free to go.
Yeah. Well, we always want those TV moments. Sometimes they're a lot fewer and far between than most people who don't practice law know that. Hey, folks, if you're just joining us, welcome to the Motion Live. I'm Morris Lilienthal. Our guest today is author and attorney Johnnie Finch, and we're talking about some great takeaways from his book, Black Lawyer Confidential, Keys to Success. And a lot of the things that we're talking about are not only keys to success of being a successful lawyer, but are keys to success in the business world and keys to success in life. When we talk about managing expectations, Johnny, I always, one of the things that I try to do, as the kids say, maybe they're not kids anymore that say this, I don't know if the kids say this anymore, but keep it real. And I try to be open and honest with clients. When I tell clients is, when I have someone come into my house to do HVAC work or do mechanic work at the garage, hey, tell me what's going on. Don't give it to me in pounds per square foot of how much pressure I need for this from HVAC. Tell me, what does it mean? Is it fixable? How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to last? So I really think on the front end and throughout the entire case, I try to maintain contact and communication, but also try to break it down for them in an easy, digestible, understanding format. And for me and for my clients, I found that that's been very helpful in doing. Hey, Carol Williams, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us. But one of the things that I think resonated with me when I was reading that, not only from a legal perspective, but I told you I think my tip from Mo yesterday resonated out of your book, which was managing your expectations in life. And when we talk about where you want to be career-wise, where you want to be family-wise, and for me right now, as everybody knows, this kind of falls Minnesota, where I want to be fitness-wise. And we were laughing before we kicked off that I'm not going to be my trainer. I'm not 6'6", 215 shredded. I am a little different from that. Let's just keep it at that. And but I got to manage those expectations. What works for me? What's successful for me? Talk to us a little bit about how you manage your own expectations. Personal.
Well, just starting out in the beginning, practicing law, it was apparent that there was a certain economic base that I was serving. So to think that I was going to come out and be a millionaire my first year practicing law in criminal defense in a very small town was not going to happen. It just the economics just weren't there. the amount that I could have charged for a felony case or a DWI case, if I wanted to actually get paid on that case, was just not there. But the amount of cases are still there. You still get the experience. So the first 2 years was, okay, how can I get as much experience as I need? And if I ever have to take this show on the road to those high economic areas, can I be ready to tackle that? Because the beauty of being in a small town is everything happens slow. You get to learn it and you get to see it fast. The bigger towns that I go to, everything happens a lot faster. And so if you don't know what's going on, you can miss it or you can make a mistake. Well, refining my skills in a small town, if I ever pivot into a major market, I know that I'm going to be ready to go and I'm going to be ready to charge that. So I think economically, one thing you look at first off is, okay, is the client base here? And if it's not, maybe you decide not to go to that town, or maybe you just do a certain thing. Maybe you just do speeding tickets in this county. Maybe in the next county where there's a college town, maybe you do DWIs and you do a lot more drug cases. So a lot of that, as an entrepreneur, you do your book research, any type of informal research that you can do as far as growing your brain, become more statistically minded, because I'm more relationally minded. I'm more driven off of passion and how things feel. And so numbers are not my thing. Someone could call me with a great business idea. Mo, you could call me with a great business idea. And before you finish, I'm like, let's do it, man. Here's the check. Let's go. I haven't even looked at how much it costs. And then in 5 or 6 months, I'm like, ooh, did we really do that? So the trick with myself is being able to manage the dollar sign, understanding that every dollar is critical. And then in times where business is good, being able to pivot into something that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you talked about that you may have stemmed, I'm curious to ask you about, may have stemmed out of your being in a smaller town and then hanging out your own shingle, is that you really, as I read through the book, the impression I got was that, hey, coming out of the chute early as a young lawyer, you were in the courtroom all the time, you were trying cases, and hey, I'm going to know my case. I may not be as experienced as the guy or gal across from me, but I'm going to do my darndest and do what I can to fight for my client and get the best result possible. But by putting your hat in the ring, you've got a lot of experience now as a lawyer who's been practicing about 5 years that really garners you a lot now when you're going in to represent your current clients based upon your experiences from before.
Yeah. One thing that I learned early, as a young attorney, it hurts to lose a case. But as an older attorney, it sucks to lose to a younger attorney. So if you have a younger attorney who's out here and they're swinging for the fences, and you see that they're not afraid to get into the ring, those older attorneys, the first time around, they'll be like, oh, he's not afraid to get into the ring, because they try to bully you a little bit. But once they realize, I really can't take an L to this young bull right now. He's kind of hot. That's only going to raise his profile, and he's going to think that he's going to be trying cases all the time. And I think in most demographics, most cases are not tried, regardless of which area you're in. But right. The more that you assert yourself and show people, hey, well, let's do this. I actually do enjoy this, but if we can come up to a better resolution for my client, then I'm happy with this. But any trial lawyer will tell you, every time that you prep for trial, when you didn't go, you still picked up something that you could take for the next time. So right now, if I have to prep for a trial and I have a week, I'm okay with doing that, because all of the time that we put into all of the trials that we didn't have, where we prepped for a whole month and then it settled the next day, that information is still there, along with all the trials that you've watched, along with all the information that you gathered from whether the judge, opposing counsel, knowing jury members, knowing your locality. So, that's the fun part. That's the big stage. And, that's how you earn your money on the big stage. You got to get off the bench and you got to take that shot, whether, especially if it's a clutch shot. And clients appreciate it. Many times jury members will actually find my client guilty, but after the trial, they'll ask for my card, say they're having trouble and they want me to come in and fight for them. And I'm thinking to myself, you just found my client guilty and you're asking for my card? All right, here you go. But,
Yeah. Well, like I said, what I attribute to you is that maybe they couldn't see the facts any other way than the way that they interpret them, but they felt like you fought as hard as you could fight and it took the facts as good as you could for your client and do it. But I think you're right, and I think that transitions into any area of life, and whether that's sports or whatever business venture you've got, is that you got to throw your hat in the ring, man. You got to be willing to put on your big boy, big girl pants, and let's go do it. Because as I say, you can't be scared. I mean, you can be scared to be nervous, but you got to get out there and you got to put your best foot forward and go get it. You're going to take your lumps. I think we're all going to take our lumps in whatever business arena we're going to do. But I think you grow and you learn from that, and you're going to use that to your advantage the next time. Well, by God, this is not going to happen the next time. I'm going to see this angle or anticipate this argument or this issue, and then moving forward, I'm going to grow from that and learn.
That's interesting that you say that. Black Lawyer Confidential was the first book, and I'm actually working on the second right now. And the premise of that book is what I learned through my first 20 jury trials. And basically, when I look back through my first 20 jury trials, there's a moment or two or three moments in each trial where I felt like I either won or lost. And so I'm putting those in perspective and putting those into lessons. And those are definitely life lessons. I mean, they definitely can help any trial lawyer when I'm breaking down exactly what happened, whether it was a jury, the judge, or opposing counsel. But certain things that happen in each trial that I took with me and I used in my own life. So that's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, man, that's awesome. And when you get it out and we get it going, we're going to get you back on here. We're going to talk about that too.
Can't wait.
I need some more tricks and tools in my bag to keep helping my clients. There's no doubt about it. But I think you're right. I think that, if when you look back at a case, there are certain seminal parts of the case or trial. Same thing if you look back and drill down in a tight football game, for example. Most coaches would tell you there's probably 3 to 5 plays that really break the game one way or the other in a tight game. That's the same thing in most trials. And usually you're not going to trial in any civil or criminal case if there's not evidence on both ends. Because if you didn't, then if it was really a no-brainer, then you probably would plead out. In my case, if it was a no-brainer, clear liability with horrific injuries, they're probably going to offer you a fair amount of settlement. There's usually going to be some issue or two that you're going to have to go let the jury decide.
And you were speaking about that earlier, probably about 3 minutes ago, and the main thing is people have to care about your cause. People have to. Why do they care about what you're talking about? I'm just assuming I haven't done any civil trials, but if it's a fender bender and there were no major injuries, maybe the person had, maybe the neck was hurting, or maybe the cat got a little scratch. If people don't care, if they genuinely don't care, just like if I'm trying a misdemeanor case in Superior Court and it's a jury trial, it's a Class 2 misdemeanor, the most maybe it's a fine, or maybe a person can go to jail for 30 days. I have to make sure that the jury cares enough about this where they'll give me the nod, because if they don't, I leave it to who are my jury members and do they care about this issue. So I have to I have to assert that upon them why this is important. Well, why this is important is because my client doesn't have a record, has an impeccable record. They're 47 years old and a prominent citizen.
Right.
And if this were you, obviously you don't have a record. You need to take this very, very, very seriously, and you don't just give the nod to the state. We get the nod. We get the nod because he's been on this world for 47 years and never had a problem with law before.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were saying about the first key point of takeaway of the book we're talking about, which is knowing your audience and learning people. That when you go in, for example, here in our jurisdiction in Madison County, we have more engineers per capita than any city in the country. We have a lot of veterans, we have a lot of scientists, and a lot of people that are related to government defense contract work. So we know that I'm a typical mindset of that kind of person that they're good number crunchers. That's kind of how their brain typically works. But when it comes to pain and suffering, we've got to really explain that better and give them tangible things so they understand and it relates to them. Whereas a different type of person, that may relate to them differently. So how I try that case, as I said here, may be different than in another jurisdiction. As we're getting close to time here, I want to be respectful for your time, but there was one other really key takeaway, Johnny, that I thought was something that's been hard for me in my personal life to do. And I think you really address this, and I think it's good for a young business owner and a young lawyer to learn this. And that's don't be afraid to say no. And talk to us a little bit about what you mean by that when you were talking about that in the book.
Well, again, Miss Jackson said it as a young lawyer. the toughest thing is to say no or to tell someone you can't help them or you're not equipped to help them. But what happens after 2 or 3 years of practice is you're bogged down with so many issues that are just there, and you can't really see a finish line because there's so many issues and so many people and so many problems that have caused the stress on your life. And so what you have to do is you have to be proactive in your business life, in your personal life, about creating situations and plans for escape. What that looks like is if you have to have emails ready, if you have to have a speech ready, if you have to have counselors ready, if I know I'm about to get on the phone and somebody's going to ask me about bankruptcy I know nothing about, I'm going to talk to them for 15, 20, 30 minutes, however long they want to talk. And I was like, that's very, very interesting. But the expert in this area is Joe, Pam, or Oliver. That's really who you need to talk to. When we get off the phone, I'm going to give them a call. I'm going to let them know that you're going to give them a call and you're going to let them know about your issue, but I'm not the guy. Now, if you ever have anything else, give me a call first. Anytime you have a problem, give me a call first. Let me be the person to connect you with someone that I know so that I know that you're taken care of and I know that they're taken care of.
Right.
And that's generally how you go about that, because at the end of the day, you don't want a lot of issues that are keeping you from doing your main thing, whatever that is that you do.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, Johnny, I think you're spot on, and is when I'm speaking with a potential client in terms of, let's talk about it from a legal context, but I certainly think this applies in a personal world too, and I want to touch on that before we wrap up. And one is I want to is it something I'm equipped to handle? I may be a lawyer, but you don't want me trying your criminal case, right? That's what I tell people is he or she may be a podiatrist, but if you've got a heart issue, you want to go to a cardiologist. Right. So that's, if you've got a bankruptcy issue or if you've got an immigration issue, it's not something that I may be licensed to handle, but boy, I'd be committing malpractice if I took it on. So it's a question of letting the client or potential client know, hey, I care enough about your cause and your issue that let me put you in the hands of the best equipped person to do that. But, and the other thing that I think is by knowing people is that when you screen a case or do something, I think this is in a business world, folks, is if you're a business owner, and you're talking to somebody that what they're talking about may work for your business. It may be a good fit from a transactional standpoint, but maybe the person isn't a good fit. I a couple of times a year, I'll speak to somebody and I can just tell that their expectations or their personality or demeanor is just not going to be a good fit for me in my practice and my time. And I want to be, even mindful of that and mindful of my time and my other places. But a potential client too to say, you know what, it's just not something I can help you with. And I'm respectful about it. I try to point them in the right direction, as you mentioned. But I think as a business owner, I think that's important to look out for that as well. But talk to us a little bit about Johnny, and I think you and I were talking about this before we got started, which is a lot of times, as a professional, and especially in a smaller town, you start getting pulled in a lot of different directions. People are starting asking you to volunteer for these groups or boards and things. And becomes tough because these are things that you may have a passion for, you want to help, but you become stretched pretty thin. How do you deal with that?
Generally, I have a priority list, and how that priority list generally works for me is on Sunday evening after church, I come into work and I have a list. I have personal, professional, spiritual, and then everything else. Hours that I've allotted for each thing, because I'm not the most organized. I absolutely have to do this. If I don't do this on Sunday, then my week is total havoc. And so if the time is allotted during that week, if it's community service, if it's a family event, those are the things that I try to put above everything else, because I realize those are the things that are giving me energy to actually be a good lawyer. The fact that I'm talking with you right now, tomorrow when I'm going to court, I'm more effective because these are the type of activities that feed my energy. Talking with other lawyers about the rough and tumble and war of practicing law, that's great. Spending time with my family, spending time with my kids, even talking with the kids at high school, football players, talking with young lawyers. These are all of the things that I love doing. Talking with older lawyers. These are the things that I love that make my life better. The reason why I'm practicing law, as we're talking right now, I'm thinking about something that I could do in court next week. So I got to fuel my own energy by the things that I can prioritize it, and nothing is better than talking to individuals before they get in trouble.
Right.
If I can talk to someone before they get in trouble, some of the best conversations I've had were with college football teams or high school football teams before the season starts saying, hey guys, marijuana is not legal yet. I don't suggest that you smoke it, and these are definitely not a smart way to do it, but you might want to take these things into account. Now, of course, 5 or 6 are still called, but the whole point is, before they get in trouble is always a great time. Once they're
Yeah.
in trouble, not as great, but I've said it at least.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I want to say hey to our friend, Jenny Keith. Jenny, thanks for joining us. I appreciate my friend, Adrian Gibson out in Las Vegas from joining us. We head your way soon, Adrian. But so, one of the things that I've had to struggle with, and I really enjoy giving back, and with my, it's, a lot of people know I'm very active in my Rotary Club and March of Dimes and doing. But I think one of the things that as a professional that you've got to learn somehow is sometimes to say no to certain things, and it stinks. It's kind of like telling a client you can't help them, that you need to send them in another direction, but just your time is very valuable. And I think as a professional and as a husband and as a parent, that's probably our most valuable resource is our time. Most lawyers charge by the hour and do. And so, you've got to figure out where your time's best spent. And I think that's something, as folks, if you're watching, and what I've had to come to the realization in the last couple of years is if it's not heck yes on an outside activity, it's got to be heck no. And I hate that. But I really, as Johnny said, he categorizes and kind of prioritizes things important in his life. I try to do the same thing, and I try to have the 3 to 4 things that I think where I want to give my volunteer time, and that's Rotary, that's the March of Dimes, and that's my son's school, and maybe 1 or 2 other things here and there that we do through the office. But that's where it is. And other outside causes, they may be worthy cause. I just don't have enough time in the day to do it, and it stinks. But you've got to do that, otherwise you're not going to get done what you need to get done. Johnny, last thing I wanted to hit on is for any, young attorneys or young entrepreneurs out there, any bits of wisdom or things that we didn't touch on that you think is real critical that they need to know when they're kind of getting started with their journey?
Back again, try your cases. As long as you're trying your cases, you're learning. Win or lose, you're learning. There's not going to be one case that you try where you lose or you make a mistake. You will never make that mistake again. You can ask anybody who's ever tried a case. Try to win your first one. If you don't, get right back out there. Understand what you did wrong. Watch as many cases as you can, whether it's on YouTube. As a young attorney, that's going to be the most amount of time that you'll ever have. Well, if you're not working for a super busy firm who's billing you over and over again. But coming from my experience, I had a lot of time to reach out to a lot of people in the beginning and just go in a courtroom, watch the decorum, understand your judges, understanding what they do, what they don't do. That time, 4 years later, when a client can call you and they have an issue and you can charge good money, but you can get it done in about 15 to 20 minutes, which was actually worth it. It just, your expertise has you be able to complete that task in 15, 20 minutes is great. But that was all because when in the beginning, you asserted yourself as a fighter and you took the time to learn your locality, your judges, local rules, and all of those things. But your clerk is a lifeline. In North Carolina, and I'm sure in all of your different states, the clerk and the court staff are your lifeline. So you need to buy cookies, you need to send flowers. If you piss them off, you better make it right, because they can either make your life heaven or they can make it hell.
Hey, you know what? As the son of a 20-year judicial assistant, my mom taught me early on that probably more important than being in with the judge is being in with the judge's staff and assistants, because they can make your life terrible. And you are 100% right. Folks, if you're just tuning in here at the end, we've been talking with on the Motion Live today, attorney and author Johnnie Finch. We have been sharing key nuggets from his book, Black Lawyer Confidential: Keys to Success, and we're going to be looking out for his new book coming out, talking about what he's learned in the first 20 jury trials. Johnny, how can people get a hold of this book? Where can they find it if they want to learn more?
You can go straight to blacklawyerbook.com, or you can go to johnnyfinchbook.com. You can go to blacklawyerconfidential.com. On Instagram, I'm Cool Relax Johnny Finch. Facebook is Johnny Finch. The website is Postscript Publishings. That's my publisher. Very, very, very easy to find. But blacklawyerbook.com is by far the easiest thing to think about when you're looking for the book.
Well, folks, at the end of the show here, Johnny, a little later on, we'll get back in the comments below here a link to where they can get the book, and I will also put your social media handles and even put your website on there. So, folks, if you're looking for a good lawyer in North Carolina, you're looking at the guy right there. Johnny, thanks so much for what you're doing. Thanks for your book, and thanks for your time, and I look forward to seeing you, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.